Well, thanks for being back with American Federation for Children here in Tennessee. I am Shaka Mitchell, the Tennessee State Director, and we're really glad to kick off our Choice Chats in 2021. I think everyone is glad to have 2020 in the rearview mirror, but in particular, I'm very excited to welcome Mayor Glenn Jacobs. He's the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. And we're so glad, Mayor Jacobs, to welcome you to our show.
Thank you, Shaka. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, for those who may not know, I would love to hear how you came into this life of public service. In particular, we know you started in September 2018 as the mayor of Knox County, but to say that you came from a sort of non-traditional route is a bit of an understatement. So how'd you get into public service?
I guess it is an understatement. I've performed for almost 30 years in professional wrestling with the World Wrestling Entertainment. As my career was coming to a close, unfortunately, we all reach that age where in a line of work like that, we have to start thinking about something different. And public service had appealed to me mainly because I just had wonderful opportunities throughout my entire life. I grew up on a farm in Northeast Missouri. My dad was retired military. Mom was a homemaker. Dad ended up getting a job as rural mail carrier. But we weren't necessarily affluent and certainly not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. And my folks weren't connected or anything like that. But despite all that, I had just these opportunities throughout my life and ended up in WWE and traveled the world and met just all these people like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and all these different folks. And I'm like, how could that happen to someone like me who grew up on a farm in Northeast Missouri? And how could someone like me get these opportunities that I was so fortunate to have? And the reason is because in the American system of government, where we put a premium on individual liberty and the free enterprise system, that's just naturally what happens is you do get these opportunities. And really, I believe that pretty much anyone can do anything with the skills that, of course, they have and the natural tools. And if they're willing to work at it, doesn't mean you will be able to do whatever you want with your life. But I think certainly you're going to have opportunities. And I think that it's been slipping away from us for some time. I think that people really take that for granted. After my travels around the world, I can tell you that this is a very unique place in that regard. And I just wanted to make sure that the American dream was going to be something that my kids and my grandkids would be able to experience just like I did in my life.
Yeah, for sure. No, the pursuit of the American dream, I think it's something we care so much about at AFC. And for us, the most sure way to get there is a quality education. Learning all that you can is something that we believe every kid should be able to access. But it's all about being able to access the dream. So what do you think has been more challenging, trying to navigate the ring as Kane or trying to wrangle with a bunch of county commissioners over budget hearings?
They both have their pros and cons, and definitely I traded in a physical abuse for a lot of verbal and sometimes emotional and mental abuse.
Right.
Now this is mayor's best job I think that anyone could ever have, because you are able to have a positive impact on your community. So it really is a great job. Our county commission is very good. Knox County is just a wonderful place to be. That's one of the I guess there's not really an upside to the pandemic at all, of course, but one of the things that I've really appreciated is how well a place like Knox County has been able to weather this crisis, especially when we look at other places around the country and Tennessee in general. So I've been extremely fortunate and blessed to come into a good situation with lots of good people.
Yeah. Will you talk a little bit about your role as the county mayor, because that's a system that that some of our listeners will be familiar with, but you've got Knoxville, and there is a Knoxville city mayor, but you are the Knox County mayor. So what's the intersection there? And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about how that relates to education. What's what your role in the education kind of ecosystem is.
Sure. Knoxville and Knox County are actually two separate political entities. Counties in the state of Tennessee are basically extensions of the state of Tennessee. We're constitutionally required to do certain things. Our officers are constitutional officers. They're offices that are created by the state. The city's different. The city's municipality has its own charter, and the city could actually dissolve. The county can't, because we are literally part of the state. The responsibilities are somewhat different as well. Basically, everything outside of the city of Knoxville, and for perspective, the city is about 180,000 people. Knox County overall is about 460, 470,000 people, probably more when the new census comes out. But in any case, the county, the folks that live outside the city of Knoxville, I guess, make up about 2/3 of our population, or 60%, I guess, that neighborhood. And we're responsible for everything, every governmental service outside of the city. And then even within the city has its own police force, the city has its own fire department, and they also have their own codes and do all that sort of thing. But we are responsible, even within the city. The libraries are all ours. The sheriff he's ultimately the top law enforcement officer in the county. So the jails are all run by the sheriff's department, the sheriff's office. The health department is under the county, even though they provide services within the city. And then schools are technically under the county. But schools are not part of Knox County government. Just like the sheriff is a constitutionally elected officer, that's why it's the sheriff's office, not the sheriff's department. The schools are the same way, in that we fund the schools. We collect the tax dollars, and then of course the state contributes money as well. But the schools then decide how that money is used, how it's distributed. They have their budget, and they submit that to my office, and we have to work that into the county's overall budget. I don't have veto power over the schools. We can kind of wrangle about the budget, but nevertheless, we have a memorandum of understanding. It's in the state of Tennessee. It's a maintenance of effort agreement, which says this is how much money we have to give the schools, no matter what. So my ability in that area is somewhat restricted. So basically, I guess we're the school's fiscal agent.
Yeah. So I've got to think, and thank you for that explanation. That's really, really helpful. And my guess is it would probably be really helpful for all Knoxville City and Knox County residents to hear that explanation too, because you probably get a lot of questions about things that are maybe not in your sort of side of the house, so to speak. So, maybe thinking about education, particularly in 2020 and now continuing in 2021, what's it looked like? And I'm thinking specifically about COVID, obviously, but what's it look like in Knox County right now? Sure.
Our schools have done a really great job of trying to keep the schools open and trying to keep kids in person classes. Yep. Parents do have the option of going virtual. And I think about 25% did sign up for the virtual option. But the schools really did try to keep the classrooms open. They have occasionally had to shut down some of the schools, but that's been because of staffing issues. Because a teacher, teachers are test positive for COVID or around someone, they're exposed. Then they have the quarantine period, and that's where they've really run into some problems. And they've also had a lot of issues with keeping substitute teachers. But overall, our schools are open. That doesn't mean that every kid is going to in-person classes, but the schools are open, and like I said, they've done a very good job in that area.
Yeah. How do you think? And we're going to wade ever so slightly into some of the things happening this month. As you know, the governor called a special legislative session, and one of his really big points of emphasis is kids who really need the option, having an in-person option. how do you think about school from from the standpoint of being the fiscal, really kind of the fiscal agent, so to speak, or the funding source of
Sure.
school? How do you think about that as it relates to in-person versus virtual versus hybrid, et cetera? What are some of the things, that you take into account?
Well, I think for me, there's actually two components. You have the individual students, and then you have our community perspective. For the individual students, I'm very concerned, especially about our at-risk students and the kids who weren't performing academically necessarily very well before all this happened. The kids who come from not great homes, in which cases the teachers and the coaches and staff, in many cases, those are the people that love them and those people that take care of them. And they're their role models. And for some of those kids, that's been taken away. I don't know that every parent is probably telling their kids, hey, you've got to go study for your class, or, you got to get on the computer and do this and this and this. And again, that's probably going to be more prevalent with the at-risk kids. So I think the governor's exactly right. I think that we're going to see a large gap. I mean, we see that over the summer where the schools are out for 2.5 months. Kids come back.
And that slide.
And they've slid down a little bit. So their first few weeks are kind of remedial, bringing them back up. They've been out of school now for, they'll be out of school for close to a year in many cases. So I think that's just going to be exacerbated. And that's a tragedy for those kids.
Yeah.
Because as you said, to me, education is, that's Governor Haslam. I remember him saying that education is the great equalizer. And I absolutely agree with that. And for many of those kids, unfortunately, they're just not going to have that. They're not going to have that this year, and that's going to make it difficult for them to catch up. As you probably know, one of the statistics that we talk about a lot is third grade reading proficiency. Across the country, we have a literacy crisis. Here in the state of Tennessee, only 33% of our third graders are reading at grade level on third grade. Now, the reason that's so important is because reading is fundamental. Everything you do throughout your academic career, everything you do throughout life almost, is based on reading. And if you're behind at third grade, those kids, unfortunately, they just don't catch up. And it has a huge impact on the rest of their academic career. That's going to be exacerbated by all this. So for the individual kids, it's like I said, it's a tragedy. For our community, it's bad news as well, because our workforce has a direct impact on our ability to retain businesses, our ability to attract businesses, things like addiction rates, incarceration rates. All those things are impacted by education. The better an education that a young person gets, we can see a correlation to positive life outcomes. The government, if someone commits a crime, that costs the taxpayers money. We've got to pay the sheriff to pick them up and then take them to jail and then keep them there. And then all the things that go along with that. And then they're not a productive person. They're not paying taxes, and all those sorts of things. Same with addiction. Addiction's a huge problem across the country, but especially here in Appalachia. Addiction rates are going to be higher for that population. Our workforce is going to be impacted by all of this. So it's really bigger than just the county's budget. It's really, we're looking at a bit of a humanitarian issue, as well as a hindrance on our ability to do some of the things that Knox County would like to do.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you, even though I asked you a kind of a question about money and about finances, you really kind of stressed the point that at the end of the day, this has a human cost, and lack of education is really, it's going to have these spillover effects, right? These externalities that deal with, crime. And if people can't legitimately show the skills to get a job, a decent job, and do an honest day's work, what are they going to turn to? Right. And the answer rarely is something that we might value as a community, as a society. Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about this college piece, and workforce development. I know that when you were campaigning, something that you talked about was career and technical education. Sometimes we call it, CTE, and is the jargon. How do you think about the links there, between maybe K-12 and what's happening in CTE? Maybe tell us what's going on in your area. And I'll tell folks watching that some, these numbers are a little bit dated, but mostly because 2020 was just kind of a wash. But one of the things that we track among college freshmen is we track the number of kids who need remedial coursework when they go to college. And, I've got to say, these numbers are always really sobering to me, because it shows that even when we're graduating kids, many of those kids are not ready. Maybe they're taking on debt to be, in college and higher ed. And, they're from Knox County. 40% of the college attendees need remedial coursework in math. 22% need it in reading. That to me seems still like maybe there's a disconnect somewhere, like where there's a misalignment. So, that's a lot of stuff I just threw at you.
Sure, no, that's fine. Overall, the American education system has really dropped the ball on career and technical education. The emphasis has been everybody has to go to a 4-year university, get a degree, doesn't matter what kind of degree, you can figure that out when you get there, accumulate tons of debt, and then hope you can get a job. And we see a student loan bubble now. They're talking about forgiving student loan debt. There's one of the problems with that is that's like the federal government's biggest source of revenue is actually payment on student loans. So there's that's one of the issues. I mean, it's it's a $1 trillion bubble now that we've created.
Yeah.
And to me, the education system should be geared towards preparing individuals to be successful in life. And what that means to me is, and that, as we talked about earlier, when I look back at my life, is everybody's going to take a different path. Okay. So we need to expose young people to as many different career and life paths as possible, and help them figure out what the natural skills they have, what career path is going to be best for them, which one they're going to enjoy the most. I'll share a personal story. I talked about this a lot when I was campaigning. I have one brother and one sister. My sister was a rocket scientist. She worked in NASA. She has an undergraduate degree in mathematics. She has an undergraduate degree in archaeology. She got a PhD in history, and now she's a professor of history at a community college in Oklahoma. Book smart, unbelievable. Okay, academically the most gifted person anyone of us would ever meet. My brother, on the other hand, was just not gifted academically. He had dyslexia, and he just had a lot of trouble in school, in the classroom. But he can take anything apart. If it's got moving parts, he can take it apart, figure out what's wrong with it, and put it back together. Now, he went to school back in the late 70s, and this was in Missouri, and they still had a robust vote. They called it VOTEC back then. They called it VOTEC. But throughout his high school career, initially he went for a couple hours a day to the VOTEC school. Eventually he went to a vocational high school, and became an auto mechanic, and has done fine, has been successful in his own way. And again, the guy can fix anything from a watch to a road grader. My sister, who has a PhD, I don't know if she can put gas in her car. Okay. That's the difference. Yeah. All these skills and all these tools that people have, that's the division of labor, of course, is what makes a modern economy go. And there's something for everyone, and everybody can be successful if they find out their own way. But we've concentrated so much on pigeonholing kids into this career path and this life path that we've lost people like my brother. And it shows. For every four skilled tradespeople leaving the workforce now, there's only one person to take their spot. Try to find a plumber, try to find an electrician. Okay. You wonder part of the reason that housing prices are going up and new construction is going up, it's because the labor costs are so high because there's not many people getting into it. Those are great career paths for the people who have those tools. And we need much more of that. One of the things that we're doing here in Knox County, I'm really excited about, is we're working with one of the contractors' trade associations on basically a facility where people that are already in that field can come and get their apprenticeships, and which makes them eligible for much better jobs and much higher pay. But we're also, hopefully, we'll be working with the schools on additional career and technical education at this place, as well as Tennessee College of Applied Technology. Here in Knox County, we have some pretty robust CTE programs, but it's kind of ad hoc. Okay, it's based on the school and the teachers at that school. And we just need more things like shop class, but we also need, more things in a modern economy, more certification programs in Microsoft and all that sort of stuff. And for the people that want to go to college, that's certainly, and have, that's their career and that's their life path. My degree's in English. I was going to be a teacher, more power to you. That should certainly be encouraged. But at the same time, we don't need to discourage the people that want to follow a different career path.
Right. And in the U.S., we seem to be able to get everybody on board with the idea that 18, 19, 20-year-olds can pick their own course, kind of, chart their own course, get to UT Knoxville, figure out what you want to do when you get there. And we're generally speaking, okay. Or frankly, don't go to UT Knoxville, go to Vanderbilt, go to, Pellissippi, go to whatever, Berry College, in North Georgia, wherever, Belmont, where I went. It hasn't yet trickled down though to K-12. You have any sense for why that is? I mean, we still think about K-12 as these tracks, and I'll tell you, just like your story with your siblings, I've got 3 kids, and they all look pretty similar. But right. Man, they are different.
They all have different gifts, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they've just got different gifts. They're interested in different things. I've got one who is really into fashion right now, and then her sister, the next one down, couldn't care less, would wear a like potato sack every day if you let her, and they're just different. And so I wonder why that hasn't yet, why we don't appreciate the need for that differentiation and that choice in K-12.
Just my theory, but I believe because K-12 is now looked at as college prep. As opposed to, even when I went to school, we had like home ec classes. What do you do in home ec? It's silly, right? Well, you learn to cook, you learn how to balance a checkbook, you learn to do those things that you may not be taught at home, but once you get out on your own, you're going to have to know how to do them. And we had some rudimentary business courses, right? And just nowadays it seems like everything is about preparing young people for the next phase of their academic career, which is fine. But at the same point in time, we should realize that, as you said, maybe not everybody wants to go to a 4-year school, and maybe some of the skills that they're going to need when they get out of high school, we need to bring those back into K through 12. And that's kind of just what I see. And again, that's not just Tennessee. That's, I think, everywhere around the country is, now it's just, the guidance counselors really, it's all about what college you're going to go to. And I think the whole system is really now designed just to say, hey, your next step is going to go to college. So this is what you need to be prepared for that, as opposed to your next step is starting life. And here's some stuff you also need to do to be prepared for that.
Yeah. When you were talking about the CTE, this career technical education, one of the things that I was reminded of is some things that we've started looking into recently, which is the ability for students to access a school, say across county lines, that may have the programmatic offerings that fit their needs a little bit better. And I wonder, I kind of put you on the spot, but in my head, that makes sense. I wonder how that strikes you. I mean, again, the idea would be if there's somebody, speak to Knox County. If Knox County schools have got some programs that really work well in digital design, and there's a student, up in Claiborne County that doesn't have access to that, well, why not just let them go across drive down the road and access that?
Sure. We actually kind of do some of that within Knox County schools. If there's space available at another school, the student does not, they can apply for that other school. They don't have to go to the school that's in their district. So we actually do have some school choice within the public school system. Once you move outside of that, inter-county, that becomes an issue because of the funding and the politics. I think now another change because of COVID is with the distance learning. I think more of those options are going to be available, even if they aren't available in school. And we see this with things like the Khan Academy. Dr. Khan has put the entire MIT curriculum on YouTube. So, I think that some of that stuff is coming. And I think that overall, I think the education system is going to change because of these are already trends that are in place. And of course, COVID's accelerated it. That sounds like a great idea, but it would be a matter of figuring it out and how to do it. But yeah, I think the more ability that parents have, even within the public school system, and students to choose their path and to choose their school, again, based upon, and a great example, again, is our CTE programs. Okay, if you live in a certain school district, they have great CTE program, within a certain high school, they have great CTE programs. If you don't, they might not, and that's just unfortunately the way the system is right now. So I think the more that we can do to offer school choice, even within the public school system, is definitely something that we should explore.
For sure, and I think you're right. I think that the COVID pandemic may be accelerating that. Just this time last year. If you would have told me that in any given week, I'd be doing 10 video calls a year, 10 video calls a week or more, I would have said, oh, that's crazy. That's going to be terrible. I'll never do it. Now, I've got to find my fancy blue blocker glasses to put on so I don't go blind from looking at all the screens, but we've adapted. And I think in some ways we're finding ways to make it work a little bit better for us. And that's one of our big hopes for the school system. I'll say, I think it's really neat. You talk about kind of finding your path over time and students finding their path. I think how interesting your kind of trajectory has been from an English major, and I don't know what you did immediately after that, but an English major turned sort of professional wrestler, which is part athlete and part, theater. And then getting into business, I know, as a business owner, small business owner, and then into public service. That's not a straight, clean line.
No.
But which maybe gave you some heartburn at some points. But but I think if our kids are well equipped, then they can be flexible, right? And they can have options. They're not just pigeonholed into doing this one thing. The making buggy whips for the rest of your life.
And even when we talk about skills, it's your soft skills that really matter. I've heard it said, Brian Tracy, who's one of the top sales consultants and gurus and writers, says that up to 80% of your success in life is based on your interpersonal relationship skills. Only 20% is your technical knowledge, and that's even in highly technical fields. And that's something as well, entrepreneurship and all those type of things, which are kind of these soft skills, but they really need to make a comeback, because I think in many cases, our kids aren't learning those, and those are really the keys to being successful in life.
Yeah. Well,
no matter what you do, as you say with me, it's like I went through this kind of spectrum of different things. But if you ask me why was I able to get through it, it's because I used the skills that I learned way back here. They're universal and they're applicable to everything that I've ever done in my life.
Right, right. And the soft skills, not the body slam skills. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes that does come in handy, but not only in certain situations.
That's right. Well, Mayor Jacobs, we are, want to be respectful of your time and mindful of it. I know you've got a lot of business and budgets and things to take a look at, but we really do appreciate you joining us on this chat. This is going to air during National School Choice Week, which is a week that celebrates those options. And again, it's not options for option's sake. It's so that kids can access the American dream. And just want to thank you for coming on with us and encourage folks to if I can, to go by and check out your office when they're in Knox County and see what a great town Knoxville is.
Yeah, please do stop by and see us. We'd love to host you.
All right. Thanks. Well, be well and stay healthy and take care.
Thanks, Jacques. Appreciate it.